Charles Witt. I'm joining from St. Louis, Missouri. My colleagues from today's event support team, Luba, Hannah, and Nicolette, and I are part of a large volunteer team of the Work on Climate organization, whose mission is to support people to transition to climate jobs or make their current job a climate job. Work on Climate does that by connecting people through a global Slack community with over 20,000 members, offering free climate expert hours and producing a series of events focused on the climate workforce. If you are interested in joining us, please visit our website for more details. Before I introduce our speaker, I want to run through some housekeeping notes and the format of today's events. We're going to be covering Cindy's background and career journey and transferable skills, guided brainstorm session, and go through breakout room discussions. We'll close with reflections and a Q&A. Please note the session will be recorded. We will have Q&A at the end of the call. If you have questions during the presentation, please type them using the link in the chat. Now I'd like to introduce our speaker. Cindy Anderson is a sustainability consultant with Alula Consulting and a strategy consultant for engineering for One Planet with the Lemelson Foundation. Cindy specializes in innovative sustainability-focused research and curriculum projects for academic institutions, nonprofits, government, and corporation. Cindy has taught thousands of people through courses and workshops around the world and online in the fields of biology, sustainability. She is honored to be a collaborative partner on the EOP initiative since its inception. Cindy led the collaborative development of the EOP framework and companion teaching guides. She is an active EOP network member. Cindy holds a Master's of Science from Oregon State University and a Master's of Education from Griffith University in Queensland, Australia. Cindy, the floor is yours.
Okay. Did you want to say anything about these numbers?
Yes, of course. We have this gives you some QR codes to scan for our volunteer opportunities, newsletter, and to donate to help support what we do. As you can see, we have a big impact on the climate change community with over 1,900 people who found a job in the climate space, the 20,000 community members that I mentioned. We offer many of the mentorship sessions and community-led events. So be sure to not only enjoy today's session, but join future ones throughout the year. Thanks, Cindy.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for being here. It looks like we have a pretty good crowd now joining the webinar, and I'm just so delighted to be with you today, to be with Work on Climate, to have this opportunity to speak with each of you. The title of my presentation is Engineering a Career for the Planet, but I really want to be talking about how you can leverage your transferable skills, competencies, and experiences. So things that you might already have in your toolkit, or you can easily gain to transfer into a job on climate. So thank you, each of you, for taking the time to be here today out of your busy schedules. And also, I know it's a really, really hard time right now for a lot of people. And I appreciate that. I appreciate that you're being here today. So a big thank you to Work on Climate. I did want to say at the outset, if you have a question that doesn't get answered at the end of this presentation, or you want to connect with me for another reason, if you're interested in Engineer for One Planet or anything related to sustainability or climate, please do feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm more than happy to connect with you, and we can have an email conversation, we can have a short meeting, that sort of thing. So my door is always open, and I really do love to try and help people achieve their goals. So Charles very kindly shared a bio about me. So my background is in biology and in education. So even though I spend a lot of my time working with engineers, I am not actually an engineer. And I don't hold a PhD. So I have 2 master's degrees, but I do not hold a PhD, despite the fact I work directly with engineering faculty on a daily basis. So as Charles did share, I'm a sustainability consultant. I have my own firm called Alula Consulting. And most of the work I'm doing these days, since the launch of Engineering for One Planet back in 2020, is I serve as an Engineering for One Planet, or EOP, strategy consultant with the Lemelson Foundation, which is a small family foundation located in Portland, Oregon, even though I live in Missoula, Montana. And I just am sharing this little image of the Disney Nature Penguins movie flyer, because the music that you heard when we were coming into the webinar is the theme song for this film. And as an example of transferable skills and experiences and opportunities, I wanted to share that I spent many years working in polar environments studying seabirds, and in the Antarctic as well as the high Arctic. And many years later, after I stopped being a field biologist, back in 2016, I was contacted by the BBC, by the amazing wildlife filmmakers, and they said they needed a science escort, which I thought was a pretty funny term. I had never heard that before, and I was like, "Tell me more." And in order for them to travel to Antarctica and get early season footage before the regular penguin biologists would show up on colony for where the penguins are nesting, they needed to have somebody with penguin expertise to join their crew. So I went back to Antarctica back in 2016 and spent 5 weeks in Antarctica to help this crew capture early season footage where the penguins were coming out of the water from the Southern Ocean, crossing the sea ice, and just joining the colony. If you have not seen that movie, it's pretty hilarious, about the story of a penguin named Steve. And the footage is absolutely beautiful. It's on Disney Nature, or Disney Plus, I think. So the agenda for today, I want to share 4 bits of advice that I give to a lot of the students I work with, people trying to change their careers, that sort of thing. I want to tell you a little bit about Engineering for One Planet in case you're interested in getting involved with EOP. I want to share a little bit about my career journey and share some transferable skills and competencies and experiences that I've had along the way that I use today with my sustainability consulting. And then we'll jump into those brainstorming activities that Charles mentioned, and then we'll have time at the end of the call for Q&A. So I hope you hang around and ask any questions that you might have. And I'm planning on sharing some on-the-job photos from Antarctica and the Arctic and Congo if you're interested in seeing some of those. And this is a picture of me way back in the day. This is what I wore for about 10 years, for about 10 months of the year, which is basically really dirty rain gear covered in seabird poop. So, it's not always glamorous doing these jobs, but this was kind of my uniform for a really long time. So jumping into my 4 bits of advice, overcome imposter syndrome. So I really feel that most people experience this at some point in their career. I continually deal with this. As I just mentioned, I work with engineering faculty on a daily basis. These are PhDs in engineering. I'm not an engineer, I don't have a PhD. So I have to kind of deal with this on a daily basis. And even today, to do this presentation, when Charles first reached out to me to be a speaker with Work on Climate, I thought to myself, what do I know that I can tell their amazing audience about a work in climate or a career in sustainability? So I just want to tell you that even a person like myself who has over 30 years of working in sustainability and climate, I still feel like I'm not an expert all the time. So just trust and embrace what you do actually know and what you can bring to the table. Experts don't all look the same. They don't have the same educational background. They don't come from the same lived experience. Just trust in what you know and be open to these sorts of opportunities and seize them when you can. I think it's really important too to be honest about your limitations and keep on learning and pushing your boundaries. The reason why I have this picture from the Biomimicry Institute website is that back in 2007, I worked at the Biomimicry Institute for several years running their university education program, which meant working with engineers and business people and designers and architects. And it was my first time transferring my biological knowledge into the design world. And for quite a long time, I really felt like I didn't have a place at the table because I wasn't an engineer or wasn't an architect. But just know that we all have our gifts to bring. And I encourage you to overcome imposter syndrome. Number two, leverage the path you're on. This is probably the number one advice I give to every student I talk to, every person who wants to move into climate, is think of every job as a climate job. I really do believe the quickest path to a sustainability or climate job is the one you're already in. So if you already have a job, think creatively about how you can move the needle to make your company, your organization, your school, your environment more sustainable, and help with climate action. And that is also a way to gain experience in the sustainability field, even if your title doesn't have sustainability or climate in it. Number three, share your passion. This advice comes from me hiring many people over the years, and also accepting students into programs, into graduate programs, into different undergrad programs, that most hiring managers would rather hire somebody with passion and motivation and positive energy than someone with a quote unquote right education or background. So it's amazing to continue to learn and get more education if it makes sense for where you want to move in your career. But don't be afraid to show your enthusiasm and passion. It goes a very long way. Number four, my last piece of advice, ask for what you want. So again, this is not something that you can apply perhaps in every moment in every job, but if there's something you've been thinking about for a long time, like you want to raise, or you want to try managing a new project, or you want more responsibility or something like that, go to your manager when you're ready, and don't be afraid to ask for what you want, because if you don't ask, the answer is always no. And in my long experience of many jobs and many years, what I have found almost without fail is that generally the answer is yes, or maybe let's try and make this work within the next year or the next 6 months or what have you. So I just want to encourage you to be confident and really think about what you want and ask for it when you have the opportunity. So switching gears, I wanted to share a little bit about Engineering for One Planet, or EOP. The vision of EOP is that sustainability, and by that we mean environmental, social, and economic sustainability, will become a core tenet of the engineering profession. We're working together to transform engineering education from a systemic level, so that every engineer is equipped with the understanding, knowledge, and skills to ensure that their work contributes to a healthy world for lifetimes to come. And you can learn more at engineeringforOnePlanet.org if you happen to be an engineer, or if you're not and you're just interested in creating systems change with actors such as engineers that can make substantial changes in the work that they do. We do this, we work at this systems level change with three different ways, three interrelated approaches. One is that we co-create curricular change materials. I'm going to share a little bit about that in a minute. We also invest in change. So through the Lemelson Foundation, we're able to provide some small grants. We provide some faculty training. We also have an award with ABET, which is an accreditation body for engineering and other STEM programs. And then also we support collaboration. So we have a volunteer action network that I invite members of this audience to join if they have interest. We also provide workshops and support communities of practice. So there are different ways that you can get involved with Engineering for One Planet if you have interest. Number one is this Engineering for One Planet network. As I said, it's a volunteer action network. We have now over 100 participants, and they're not just engineers. So they're from across sectors. I'm part of it. I'm a biologist. They're from different disciplines, regions, backgrounds, lived experiences, and we work together on collaborative project-based actions. So if you have interest, please consider joining. This is our first time. We launched in 2021, but it's our first time since that time that we've had an open call for network members, and that is open until April 7th. So we're just looking for like-minded people that are really interested in making change with engineering education. We're looking for more people from industry, funders, students, people from across sectors. really a diversity of backgrounds of education, lived experiences, and work experiences. And it's a great way to expand your own network and to gain new experiences. The last thing I'm going to share about Engineering for One Planet is a tiny bit about our Engineering for One Planet framework, which is really the cornerstone of the EOP initiative. It was launched in 2020 along with the initiative, and this framework was co-created with around 100 stakeholders from across sectors and disciplines. And really what they did was come up with all the student learning outcomes that they felt that engineering students should be exposed to and acquire by the time they graduate, so they can really face humanity's greatest challenges, including climate change. So there are 9 different topic areas where systems thinking is central to it. And 6 of those topic areas really focus on technical skills. And then 2 of those topic areas focus on professional and leadership skills. And so I wanted to touch base on this today because I really feel like the professional leadership skills, competencies, and experiences of critical thinking and communication and teamwork, that's how they're designated in our framework, but even more broadly are things that really industry is looking for and can be applied to any job related to sustainability and work on climate. So one thing I wanted to share is just last year, we worked with a consultant, actually somebody who works with work on climate, to do this research project, a small research project to connect with industry leaders to ask them what are the current skills that industry needs in order to meet their sustainability targets. And what they came back with was a number of technical skills, such as like knowing how to do life cycle analysis and things like that. But there were also many, very importantly, many professional and leadership skills and competencies and experiences that they want to see when people are applying for green jobs. So they want to see that you're able to collaborate. Have you worked on multidisciplinary teams? Do you know how to work on teams effectively? Can you critically think and problem solve and actually do some analyses? Are you a good communicator in all the different ways? Do you show excitement and passion for sustainability work? And do you have any relevant work experiences or subject matter expertise that could be useful to that industry? So shifting over to my career path, I wanted to share just like a few little stories that could help you understand sort of this idea of transferable skills and competencies. So these are things that I've learned along the way of my 30-year journey, and I still use today as a consultant, and I have used in many different jobs. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump right in. So the first thing is volunteerism or volunteer work. I still volunteer today. I spend a lot of my time volunteering, actually. I live in Missoula, Montana. I volunteer at my local food bank. I volunteer at my homeless shelter. I also serve as a science fair judge. I've been doing that for almost 2 decades. I love that. I also work to volunteer on different awards committees. So I just try to take the things that are interesting to me and find opportunities to volunteer. But the story I wanted to share related to gaining transferable skills is one of my first jobs as a volunteer when I was an undergrad studying biology in Ontario, Canada, where I'm from. I took a volunteer job at our local arboretum, where I took groups of kids, mostly unruly kids, into nature. And so what I was trying to do was transfer my knowledge of biology and the natural world to help these kids really fall in love with nature so that hopefully they would want to conserve and preserve it as they grew up. And what I learned in that experience was that a positive attitude goes a really long way. I learned to be accountable, to show up on time and do the work no matter what the weather was, no matter how grumpy the kids were, that sort of thing. I started to learn to become a teacher. I gained teaching experience. I learned how to make lesson plans. I learned how to engage students in learning, and I learned people skills. I started to engage with people that I wouldn't normally engage with. And also I had to learn how to resolve conflicts, not just with the students, sometimes with the parents. And it wasn't always that easy, but that was when I was quite a young person. And it's quite funny, I think, how often I think back to that experience when I'm teaching today, like when I'm teaching faculty members. Sometimes there'll be some little memory that will pop into my mind that's like, oh, this is just like that kid at the Arboretum that used to drive me crazy, or something like that. So another thing that I wanted you to think about related to transferable skills is your lived experience. I think this is the most undersold, undersold sort of competency that people have that could bring to the table that they don't usually highlight in their resumes, and they often don't highlight in their interviews. But I can tell you that lived experience is extremely important. The context that you were raised in, your experiences of who you interacted with, what kind of different roles that you played as you were growing up, and as you're moving into your career and what have you, all lived experience is very important. And the little story I wanted to share was about my first contract in the Arctic. So as I mentioned, I think we mentioned earlier, I spent a lot of time studying seabirds in the Canadian high Arctic and also the Antarctic. But before I went the very first time in 1998, I didn't know how to get there. I knew in grade 5, I wanted to go to the Arctic. Like, I was just obsessed since grade 5. And so by the time I graduated with my undergrad, I was determined to get a job in the Arctic. And I was basically willing to do anything. I was willing to go wash dishes if they let me. But I ended up this is 1997. So this is before the internet was really a useful method of tracking down people and whatnot. But email was available at that time. So I found a list of Canadian Arctic researchers, and I cold emailed and then followed up with cold calling all these different Arctic researchers. And I had different conversations. And of course, I had very little experience. As a biologist, I had just graduated, but I finally connected with a researcher who was asking about my background. And I said that I grew up on a small farm in Southern Ontario. And he was like, tell me more about that. And so I did. And that is honestly what got me hired. He had understood what it meant to be a farm kid. He was also a farm kid. And so he was like, okay, well, I know you know how to work hard. I know you're going to be tenacious and adaptable. I know that you must know how to be a problem solver because things break all the time on farms. And you're obviously not afraid to get dirty or cold because that's basically what you do as a farmer. So again, this is just a little vignette to underscore that you don't know how powerful your lived experience could be and how it might connect with that hiring manager that you're working with. I ended up working with this researcher for over 8 years. So that one little cold call ended up being a huge impact on my career. So networking. This one seems probably very obvious. I mean, people know go network, of course, but sometimes it's a little bit frustrating. Like, how do I do that? Where do I go? Like, what do I say? So again, a little story from my backyard or my background. My first contract that I landed in the Antarctic was because of a connection that I made at a conference. So I attended a conference. I was actually presenting about my own research. And I heard another researcher present about their work on penguins in Antarctica. And I made a mental note, like what that guy looked like, what his name was. And then I searched for him at the conference, and I found him at the coffee table and was like, let me quote unquote buy you a coffee, even though it was free. And I was like, would you please tell me about your research and what you do? I'm super interested. And also one day I want to work in the Antarctic. So could you maybe let me pick your brain to find out what I need to work there? And so really, I think networking is about being really willing to get out of your comfort zone, to talk to strangers, to be curious and ask questions, to be an active listener, and again, to show passion and enthusiasm. So many months later, I think it was around 6 months later, I ended up emailing him and saying, hey, we met at this conference, and I don't know if you remember me, but I was like super excited and buy you a coffee. And I'm interested to know if you might have any work on your birder team in Antarctica. And he said, well, throw your resume in. We do tend to hire 1 or 2 people each year. And so I did, I interviewed, and I ended up getting that position and working with him for many years in the Antarctic. So again, it doesn't mean like everybody you're going to talk to is going to land you with a job, but it does mean kind of going out there and showing your excitement, and also not being afraid to talk to strangers. So one thing I'll share is teamwork. This is obvious, and I mentioned that this is what industry wants. You know, they want to know you can work on teams. They want to know you can collaborate. I used to be one of these people that I thought it's just easier to do it myself. Like it's going to be faster, it's going to be more efficient, it's going to be less complicated for me if I just do things by myself. But with my experience in the Arctic, I learned really quickly that not only are there things that you can't do by yourself, there are a lot of things that aren't safe to do by yourself. So there's polar bears roaming around. We have everybody's carrying shotguns. We're scaling 1,000-foot cliffs to get to seabird nests. You can't do those things by yourself. So I learned really quickly to pitch in when and where needed, and to step back when you're not needed, and step forward when you can, to really support others' strengths and acknowledge when somebody else can do something better than you and faster than you, and to accept that kind of help. Just a couple more things I'm going to share with you. Creative leadership. So at the Minneapolis College of Art and Design, I had the pleasure of working there for about 8 years or so. And at that school, we launched the world's first online multidisciplinary master's in sustainable design. And I know there's at least one of my students on this call, former students from way back in the day. So hi, Amy. Great to see you. And the thing I wanted to share about that experience was that I was the director of that program, but I learned really quickly when I joined the school that there were so many incredible faculty members that had such great, deep understanding of different aspects of sustainability and design. And really what I needed to do was lead from behind. So I really needed to be an effective project manager, to really embrace the collaborative spirit, have patience with the process and celebrate our successes together. But really, it wasn't about me coming in and telling people what to do, but instead listening to what they were already doing really well and helping us go through an academic review process so that we could get accredited. Okay, so the last example I'm going to give from my own life is about logistics. I cannot say enough about logistics. If you are organized and planful, you are needed in any job, in every job, especially climate jobs, because there's always so much to navigate and manage and take care of and plan and order and organize. But after a few different Arctic contracts where I was serving as a field biologist and researcher, I was asked and hired to be a field camp manager, which means you're the person who handles all the logistics for those field camps. So I was responsible for planning for the field season, ordering everything we would need, shipping everything to the spot that it would get helicoptered out to our sites, field sites too. And that included food and equipment and fuel. It also meant hiring and managing the field teams throughout the summer and putting up the camp, constructing a whole camp and then taking it down at the end of the season. So it's a lot to manage, but I learned a lot of skills through those experiences. But I also wanted to talk about how it can transfer into other roles. So 20 years later, I was bound and determined to work with Doctors Without Borders. It was a goal I had for 2 decades. And I actually didn't realize that this would be the type of job I could get with Doctors Without Borders, but I ended up applying for what they call a log job, which is short for logistics. And it was really my experiences of putting in field camps and managing them that landed me that job with Doctors Without Borders in the Congo. And there I was able to apply, all those sort of organizing and planful skills and the idea of being observant. I think people don't think about this as being a job skill, but the fact that you can see what's going on and notice something before it happens is a real skill that can be transferred into any job. And being responsive and adaptive, so like quickly responding to needs and adapting to change, also a fantastic skills for any job. Okay, so I'm going to um, sh shift gears here so that we can shine the light on each of you. So just like I just did, I was hoping that we could spend just about 5 minutes on our own. So I love to give individuals a chance to reflect and think on their own before we go into groups, because I know that sometimes people are not as extroverted and it's easier to kind of get your thoughts pulled together if you have a few minutes on your own. So what I would love for you to do is think of a skill or experience that you already have. And the big hint is to look at your lived experience in particular, but work and volunteer experiences, and think of a skill that you already have that you could transfer into a climate job. And we'll give you 5 minutes to do that now. And then we're going to come back together. We're not going to go anywhere. We're just going to sit here for about 5 minutes. And then we'll come back and I'll share the instructions for the small group breakouts. Maybe Charles can play that music again. I don't know.
I had some technical difficulties, but I can try.
Okay. So just a couple more minutes working on your own, thinking about what are some skills or experiences or competencies that you already have that you might not be thinking about that you could transfer into work on climate. Okay, just a few more seconds before we move on. So you can maybe finish up your last little thoughts for yourself. Okay. All right. Well, I'm really excited about the next thing that we're going to do, which is we're going to move into small groups. So we're going to put you into randomized breakout rooms, and you're going to spend about 10 minutes with your group and 10 minutes total with your group. But I want you to spend just the first few minutes thinking of a skill or experience that you'd like to gain. And then talk with your group about that skill or experience, and talk with your group about start brainstorming, where could you begin to gain that skill or experience or hone it. We do have some Google Slides to share with you so that you can capture ideas together in one place. And then we're going to return to the main room, and we'll just do popcorn style with the different groups and hear what you came up with. What are some of the skills and experiences that you're looking for, and where you're thinking about being able to start to gain them. And maybe the whole group will have other ideas to provide to you. So as an example, just to give you a working example before you go into your small groups. So say, for example, you want some teaching experience, and that would be useful in a climate job, because there's always these opportunities to talk to people, communicate to people about climate, and there's a learning opportunity there. So you could gain this skill or experience by volunteering at a local organization where you can teach people something that you already know. And so something from my own community, my own backyard, which I have done myself, is volunteer with the IRC, the International Rescue Committee. You could volunteer as an English tutor. I think most people on this call can probably speak English. There are a lot of refugees that need help with English tutoring or with computer skills, or sometimes it's actually physically taking people onto the local bus and showing them how to navigate your own town or city. And all of that would give you experience teaching. So that's just one example of a skill that you might want and how you could potentially get it. So this is what the slide deck looks like. You're going to go in to your randomized group. You will have a group number, and everybody should have access to go in and edit these slides. We just ask you to capture ideas in this lower box within there. And again, there's instructions at the top, the exact same instructions I just gave you. Again, you're thinking of what's a skill or experience that you'd like to gain, and where could you begin to gather it and hone it and work with your group on that. So have you shared the link? Oh yeah, Luba has already shared the link in the chat box, and you're going to be randomly assigned, and you can go to that link and find your group number and start to work away on your slides. And we're going to give you about 10 minutes to do that. So go have fun. Back into the whole group, the main room. I hope that was useful. I saw some great ideas getting populated in the slide deck. And so everybody has access to those slides right now. So we can feel free to be following along when we do our whole group share out. So I would just love to do this popcorn style. Anybody that's feeling excited and passionate about sharing something they discovered, or a conversation that they had in their small group that they want to share with the whole group about what skills they want to gain to transfer into a climate job, and how you would go about gaining it and honing it. And related to sharing, I just want you to know, like, again, we all have things to bring to the table, to the conversation. So I want to invite anybody in the whole group to respond to what people are sharing. If you have other ideas about how people can gain or hone those skills that they're seeking, please jump in and share, or share in the chat box. So who would like to share? Which, okay, we have a hand raised. Perfect. I can't see.
May I go first with group number 6?
Yes, please do. Please do.
All right. Hi, Pranav here. So I think we were 4 of us in the group, and the skill I specifically mentioned is very much relevant to my background. So I work as a software engineer, and that means that I don't have to do any client-facing roles, or where I have to meet external people, which means that I don't get to work on my presentation or communication skills, which I realized might be a major setback because the higher up you go, it is more about communicating and convincing people what you're talking is making sense, which I think is very important in the context of climate. Which is why that is one skill that I mentioned I want to develop. And then everybody had like different ideas, like Alexa from my group, she suggested a YouTuber I could check out. Then I think Carly said that there was the LinkedIn influencers who post about climate storytelling. And I think for everyone else's ideas as well, all of us had different suggestions that, oh, you could volunteer over here, or you could do this fellowship. So all of us had a resource for everyone's idea. So that was incredibly helpful. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that example. I think that's a perfect example of how maybe you have this desire, you want to gain the skill, but just because of what you do on a daily basis, you don't have this opportunity. And I saw in the notes there, somebody mentioned Toastmasters. That was something that I thought of right away.
Right.
I'll share with you is related to this about getting communication and presentation skills. What is it called? Project Drawdown has a project going on right now where they're asking people to share little video vignettes about the work that they do related to sustainability or climate. It doesn't have to be in their job title, but that could be a little like push you out of your comfort zone opportunity to present that could be shared on social media. But I love it. I love how you're thinking. I think that's great. And you had a lot of input from your team.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Nilufar, do you want to share?
Yeah, thank you. So I was in the group, I were in the group of number 2. So we had a great discussion regarding different topics. So my background was is in sustainability supply chain management, and then we had a kind of intersection with different people. For example, Mabel and also Andy, they had the same background, kind of similar to mine, and then we shared the kind of way how to increase our knowledge in that area. For example, Mabel shared that you can pass the course or get the certificate using Trello. It was new to me. And then also a Cambridge class on supply chain sustainability. And the other way around, we also had some discussion with Jasmine, one of our members. She also worked on sort of architectural visualization, and she wanted to know more about visualization and data analysis. And then we shared our idea. Okay, so you can get, for example, Udemy courses or data camps to sort of be able to connect your knowledge in culture or architecture with data analysis as well. I mean, it was very helpful. I mean, we had a sort of intersection that could help us and share idea. And then the other point was we had another member, Sonia, that she was expertise in VR and AR. And then she were thinking about how to include sustainability in her game designs, for example, and how to put it into practice. And then we shared some sources, actually shared out our whatever knowledge we had, and it was very helpful. Thank you for making this breakout room for us.
Perfect. Wonderful. Wow. It sounded like that was a very productive room. I love it. And just like coincidentally, all the commonalities and your intersections that you found together, that's amazing. Did anybody from the whole group have anything to share with Nilufar or Pranav about what they were talking about, the skills that they're interested in? Any other ideas? If you do have them, you can share them in the chat if you think of other things. Is there another group that wants to share what happened in their room, or maybe just one idea about a skill or experience that they want to gain and how you might go about getting it? Or maybe you didn't get an answer and you want one from the whole group. Yeah, Nirmal, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Cindy. We had a great group, and I think we had some diverse backgrounds, people in different stages of their career and different backgrounds, a couple data scientists, person with organizational skills, another with a lot of consulting and customer facing skills. I think the one thing we agreed on was volunteering was a good thing, finding a good opportunity to volunteer somewhere. And also finding opportunities to take the skills that we've generated from our previous careers and use those volunteer opportunities to create a track record that sort of can move us and propel us forward into climate-based opportunities. So happy if anybody else from our team wants to add in anything, but I think that was the overall summary.
I love it. That's great. Yeah, you can't go wrong with volunteering. It's amazing the additional skills and experiences that you get from volunteer opportunities. I often think of sort of a work experience, a volunteer experience, almost like an iceberg, going back to my polar background, where you think maybe you're going into an experience and you're going to learn to teach, so that's the main skill you're thinking of. That's the part of the iceberg that's poking up above the water. But what you're not seeing is all the other things that you're learning on the job. So it's how to have people skills, interacting with people, how to negotiate, and manage people. Maybe it's how to be nuanced in your responses to people, how to communicate better, more clearly. So there are a lot of skills and competencies that you can gain when you're not even thinking about that's what we are trying to achieve. So thank you for sharing that. It sounds like a really great group that you had too. Oh, and the other thing I wanted to point out was work on climate. I think Charles mentioned this at the beginning, but I just want to highlight that I was on the site looking at this earlier this morning. There are so many volunteer opportunities available on the Work on Climate site to really gain and hone these skills that you might be looking for. So if you haven't done presentations, there's opportunities to do these sorts of things or help with presentations, for example. Are there any other groups that want to share what they talked about in their groups? I'd love to hear from other people. Anybody else? Okay, I don't see any hands raised. Well, this seems like a great time to shift over to our Q&A. I know that you're very, very busy people and you have a lot on your plates. And so if you need to leave, please don't hesitate. Don't feel pressure to stay. But if you have questions for me or for the Work on Climate group, please do stay and feel free to pop your questions into the chat or just raise your hand and we can deal with them verbally. And again, please do feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'd be happy to connect with you. Oh, and I was going to share, I forgot about this. I'm going to share some pictures with you guys as well, just as we're chatting. So any questions from anybody?
Cindy, we have one so far.
Okay.
In terms of showing your passion, especially if your skills are underqualified, how do you suggest showing that besides volunteering or professional networks like Work on Climate?
Yeah. Oh, that's such a great question. I think you can show your passion in ways like honestly, I do think volunteering is the best way to hone skills and show your passion because so many organizations do need volunteers, especially now in the current climate. But you asked for examples besides volunteering. So I'll think hard about that. So for example, showing up at these sorts of webinars, these educational opportunities, sometimes there's online classes that you can take and you can start to build, to grow and expand your network and show your passion through those connections. So, outside of Work on Climate, there's Project Drawdown. There are a lot of different organizations that are doing interesting work. For example, I shared with you about Engineer for One Planet. I mean, if you're interested in moving the needle on sustainability education, whether or not you're an engineer or not, connect with us. So we might have an opportunity for you. And that's a way to show your enthusiasm and passion. I think also you know, some things cost money, and I hate to make recommendations for people to spend money. Sometimes there's free classes you can take or free opportunities to engage, but there's also paid experiences. You know, you could pay to go to a conference, for example, and just decide, you know, this is worth investing in my future career. And I'm going to go to this specific conference where I know, you know, there's all these green businesses, for example, and I'm going to spend every day, I'm going to invest, you know, 2 hours connecting with people and just like showing them how enthusiastic I am and try and make connections and build my network. So those are just some ideas that come to mind, just at the top of my head, but I will open it up to the group. Does anybody else have other ideas to answer this question? How do you show your passion outside of volunteering and networking? Any ideas that people want to share? I love the question from Paul here. How do you get weather readings in Antarctica if the weather stations freeze? That's a really good question. That picture was actually from the Arctic, and we did not get any weather data that day. Yeah, it is a problem when you're in an ice storm. That's right. So Sarah put in the chat here, sometimes conferences have cheaper prices for vendor floor only. That's great. Sometimes, actually, that's another, again, we're going back to volunteering, but sometimes if you're a student or you're willing to volunteer at a conference, you can, if you work at the exhibition hall, for example, or something like that, then you get a free pass to a free registration pass for the conference. So it's a chance to connect with people.
We've got a few more questions, Cindy.
Sure.
Which conferences have actually helped you land clients or jobs?
Oh, interesting. Which conferences have helped me land clients or jobs? Well, you know, I think it depends on what field you're in. So when I shared that story about getting my first contract in the Antarctic, you know, I went to the Pacific Seabird Group conference, which is probably not relevant at all to anybody on this call. But that was back in the day when I was doing seabird research. And so I was presenting my findings at a seabird conference. And so that I just happened to be in a community of an audience that was filled with seabird researchers. So I think going where you want to go. So even if your background is, say you don't have the background in green business, but that's where you want to head, go to a green biz conference, you know, that sort of thing. But again, going back to my experience, so I work a lot in education, higher ed education. And so I've attended a lot of different conferences related to education. So sometimes for many years, I attended online learning consortium education conferences because I was working online in education a lot. I've attended many conferences related to engineering education. So American Society for Engineering Education, American Society for Mechanical Engineers, those sorts of things. So those have helped me connect with people that are interested in bringing sustainability into higher ed or into engineering education in particular, which is really the field that I'm in right now. But basically the idea is go to the place where the audience is filled with people that want to do what you're doing, or what they may be doing what you want to do. I'm not sure if that's answering that question very well. Enrique
has a question. You want to come off mute, Enrique?
Sure. Thank you. So my question might be a bit simple, but let me give you the context. So I am transitioning from big tech into climate tech, right? I still haven't found a job there. And one of the main challenges that I've been faced with is that nothing in my profile says climate, right? I've had a good career, successful career in big tech, ads, digital marketing, that kind of stuff. And I have been working in building that profile, right? So I got into a formal program at Stanford, and I've been writing articles and things like that. Still, with this conversation, I believe I have a lot of skills that could be transferred to climate. And when I heard you say, yeah, volunteering is a good way to go about it, that sounds really good, right? And you also mentioned, I believe that in the website in Work and Climate, there are like volunteering opportunities. I would like to find a way to volunteer in a way that helps me use these skills, consulting, customer facing engagement, customer success in the climate space. So I'm not sure, I haven't been able to find such volunteering opportunities. I am volunteering in organizing the SF Climate Week, for example, but it's not like the kind of things that will help me make use of those transferable skills. So I was wondering if you had any particular recommendation for me.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it can be really hard to sort of like bridge that gap when you have a whole lot of experience and it is outside of the boundary of where you're used to looking and engaging with. And that's where, number one, I think you're doing the absolutely right thing. Like right now, you're showing up to be in a community of people that are thinking and doing things differently than you normally do. So I think getting that kind of exposure to connect with other people that you could find opportunities within is really smart. I think the other thing is, I know it's kind of poo-pooed now. I don't know how often people cold call anymore or cold email or cold LinkedIn connect, but there is benefit, in my opinion, to like doing enough research to finding people that are doing the thing that you want to do and reaching out to them and say, hey, I have all this background. I think it would be completely aligned with the type of work you're doing. I was just wondering, could I pick your brain for 15 minutes or a half an hour sometime in the next month where you could help me think about how did you end up in this career path, or how could I make this jump over to this realm of work? In my experience, most people are really happy to talk about themselves. Number one. And number two, I feel like most people want to be helpful, so again, it's not a very simple answer, but I think now with the internet and with LinkedIn and other sites, social media sites, I do think it's easier to find people that are doing the thing that you want to do and then reach out to them. Like usually you can find a contact information and try to connect. And maybe don't start at maybe you're not trying to connect with the CEO of some major organization or corporation. Maybe start with somebody lower down in the chain that might have more time to respond to your email. I don't highly recommend going through HR though, because that can put you into a pile where they don't actually respond unless there's a job. So it's less about finding a specific job right now and more about having the conversation about how to get into that work and what you should be doing. I hope that's helpful, Enrique.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks so much. And I also saw a couple of comments on the chat about the Slack channel and stuff. So nice. Yeah, thank you all.
Great. Okay, it looks like Nulafar, you have a question or comment?
Yeah, not a question, but it was very interesting that you bring up this conversation with Enrique regarding the cold emails, because actually I'm in the process of having some interaction and getting interviews from cold emails, because I'm enrolled in the Lab to Market Validate program. So the main job is to get interviews and then to reach out to people, to have lots of 1,000 reach out over the 2-month program. And I just wanted to share which apps you can use to find out the persons who are really within your background. So one of them is, for example, you might know, but I wanted to bring it up for all of the people here, Sales Navigator within LinkedIn, that you should pay $100 per month, but it's really helped me to get 400 people with the same expertise that I have, like supply chain manager, sustainability. And then I can also reach out to them with using some automation tool. And then it's really worked for me. So over the last 2 weeks, I had a 12 interview per week with cold emails and cold reach out because I really found that specific person. And also I bring up that message that I only need your 15 minutes to be able to discuss and then know the challenges within this field and then be able to refine my idea for, let's say.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. That's amazing.
That's
And
great.
you,
That's your for myself. Yeah.
and you shared the name of it. Was it called Navigator? You were kind of, I couldn't hear everything you were saying very clearly.
Yes. So maybe
Navigator.
because of my Sales Navigator. This is the app that it's connected with the LinkedIn. So
Okay.
you can search for your so there's a kind of platform connected to the LinkedIn. You can filter the customer industries, the roles that you want, everything can be just filtered, and then you can find the list of the people who you really look for, and then you can so the next app, if I want to just share my experience, unfortunately I paid, you should pay for them. So it's Dripify. If you really need to have the extensive customer discovery, so Dripify what it can do is to save all of the leads that you found from the Sales Navigator to Dripify, and then you can just there's a kind of automation algorithm there that for example, you can set, okay, per day, just send 100 invitations using these leads that I have. That's very cool. I just used it in a couple of weeks ago, and then I can share more if anyone interested. And like I can just put that file link into the chat. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And hopefully Enrique and others will potentially be able to use that. And, I realize that it sounds like there's a little bit of a cost related to that. So again, you may make the decision like it's worth the however many dollars a month to have that, or maybe you use it for 1 month and then you cancel your subscription or something like that. But I will say things are a lot easier now to find people and to be able to connect with people. And of course, we all are overwhelmed with emails and on social media. So of course, not everybody's going to respond, but if there is a connection and one other thing I'll just add, if you do end up using LinkedIn, my advice is to make a personal note when you send your connection link. I notice for my own self, like, again, this is my own personal experience. When people connect with me and say, hey, I saw you on this webinar, or hey, I saw your profile and I really would love to talk to you about this particular things. To me, it says like that person has invested time and energy in trying to understand why we should be connected. And I'm more likely to accept the connection and then have a conversation with people versus when people send the automatic connection on LinkedIn. So again, just like another piece of information that might be helpful to make it personalized and to help the person understand that you actually are invested in taking the time to connect. Any other questions? I'm just looking at the chat here.
Yeah, I think it's we're reaching towards the end of the session. We might have time for one more question if anybody has one to want to raise their hand, but no. All right. Well, I want to thank everybody for joining our session. Cindy, if you could go share your screen again and show the last slide.
I am sharing it. Can people see?
Okay, great. Yeah, I can. So yeah, we'd love to have get everybody's feedback. So if you could take a couple of minutes and give us some feedback by scanning the QR code. It helps us improve our work on climate events and support the wider community. Also, if you're not yet part of Work on Climate, remember to check out our website, workonclimate.org, if you'd like to get involved. And you can always reach out and learn more about our speaker, Cindy. You reach out to her on LinkedIn. I think she shared that earlier. And if you'd like to connect with our Work on Climate event team, email us at events@workonclimate.org. But I'd love to thank Cindy again for her time today. We really appreciate it and hope everybody enjoyed today's session.
Thank you so much, everybody on the team. I really appreciate the invitation. And everyone, thank you so much for taking the time to join me today and have the conversation. It was really great. I had a great time. And I just wish you the best of luck in your journey, your career journey, and foraying into the world of work on climate. We need you. Don't give up. Come join us. All right. Take care, everyone.
Thank you,
All right,
Cindy.
have a good
Thank
day,
you,
everyone.
Charles.